U.S.-Israel Partnership, handing America's tech crown to Israel. On U.S. taxpayers' dime. By Gen X Girl 1994. In a move that underscores the lopsided nature of U.S.-Israel relations, the two countries are negotiating a proposed 20-year security aid pact to succeed the current 10-year Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, which expires in 2028. Israel hopes the new agreement will provide an annual sum at least equal to, or even greater than, the previous $4 billion per year. Negotiations, which halted amid Israel's ongoing genocide in Gaza, have restarted with an eye toward closure within a year, though the White House remains quiet, perhaps wary of the political optics. Israeli officials and Israel lobby groups like AIPAC tout this as innovative outside-the-box thinking, but it is a thinly veiled subsidy for Israel's defense sector, with U.S. taxpayers footing the bill for technologies that primarily enrich Israeli firms while offering scant returns to America. Israel's zombie economy. Israel's economy is under significant strain as a result of its genocide campaign in Gaza, and to a lesser extent, the West Bank, prompting increased U.S. intervention. While information about Israel's struggling economy is not widely discussed in the West, Israeli economists such as Dr. Sherhever have concluded Israel heavily relies on foreign investments and loans to remain viable, dubbing it a zombie economy. Key vulnerabilities include BDS impact. The boycott, divestment, and sanctions (BDS) movement is reducing foreign investment. Tech sector collapse. A 90% drop in tech investments has exacerbated economic instability. Tourism. Israel's tourism industry has virtually stopped. Port damage/bankruptcy. Eilat Port declared bankruptcy in 2024, while other ports have been damaged during Israel's war with Iran. Weapons dependency. While Israel buys weapons from the U.S. using American taxpayer money, it depends on European supply chains that are increasingly imposing sanctions. Israel's economy contracted in Q2 2025, primarily due to the severely disruptive 12-day war with Iran in June. GDP shrank by 3.5% annually and 0.9% quarterly. All major components fell, with a sharp 12.3% drop in investment and a 4.1% decline in private consumption. Exports plummeted 12%, while imports also decreased by 3.5%. Reflecting this impact, the Bank of Israel lowered its 2025 growth forecast to 3.3%. In 2024, Israel ran the largest budget deficit, which is the gap between a government's revenue and expenses in a given year. Its genocide campaign in Gaza and shrinking economy has widened the gap between government spending and revenue collection, taxes. With all sectors either damaged or struggling to stay afloat, Israel has turned to its benefactors in the U.S. to bail it out, yet again. The U.S.-Israel Defense Partnership Act. The U.S.-Israel Defense Partnership Act of 2025, S. 554 and H.R. 1229, sponsored by Israel lobby-funded lawmakers Senators Dan Sullivan, Republican Alaska, and Gary Peters, Democrat Michigan, in the Senate, and Representatives Joe Wilson, RSC, and Donald Norcross, Democrat New Jersey, in the House, pivots from straightforward military handouts to so-called cooperative research, development, testing, and evaluation, RDT&E, in bleeding-edge fields like artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, quantum computing, robotics, and automation. This brazen heist of U.S. technological supremacy in domains where America outpaces rivals like China is being gifted to a nation with a documented history of espionage against U.S. industry and government and repackaging U.S. technology as Israel innovation under the auspices of programs funded by the U.S. taxpayer. Israeli officials spin it as mutual security against shared threats like drones and missiles, but the terms of the agreement and history scream giveaway. Defense Innovation Unit. Under the U.S.-Israel Defense Partnership Act, Congress proposes spending $50 million yearly to create a Defense Innovation Unit office inside Israel, primed to vacuum up American IP under the guise of countering Iran. As we've seen through past decades where companies foolishly move their R&D to China, where they concurrently manufactured products, this is a sure way of handing IP to Israel while outsourcing U.S. manufacturing and jobs to Israel. National Technology and Industrial Base, NTIB. Another provision in the proposed agreement would admit Israel into the National Technology and Industrial Base, NTIB, granting it profound strategic benefits like integrating its defense and technology sectors directly into the U.S.-led alliance industrial base with Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. This would provide Israel with streamlined, prioritized access to cutting-edge U.S. military technology and dual-use items, significantly easing the requirements of international traffic in arms regulations, EAR, and export administration regulations, EAR controls. In practice, this means seamless flow of critical technologies, fundamentally enhancing Israel's qualitative military edge and allowing Israeli firms to bid for U.S. military contracts. Reports from U.S. intelligence officials indicate high levels of Israeli political, military, and economic espionage in the U.S. for decades, which often complicates full intelligence and technology sharing. For decades, U.S. intelligence has stated the U.S. cannot fully trust Israel not to commit espionage, which has been a factor in its exclusion from highly integrated initiatives like the NTIB. However, despite warnings from U.S. intelligence, the FY 2024 National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, established a U.S.-Israel Defense Industrial Base Working Group to deepen technological integration and look at the potential for future NTIB inclusion. The FY 2026 NDAA provides additional authorization and funding for this working group, building Israel's military capability under the guise of U.S. stockpiles. The agreement also expands and extends placement of U.S. military stockpiles in Israel. A review of a related bill in Congress demonstrates a deeper level of manipulation. The Bunker Buster Act to equip Israel against Iran's continued nuclear threat, introduced in the House by Israel lobby-funded representatives Josh Gottheimer, NJ5, and Mike Lawler, New York 17, will require the U.S. to build out a full bunker buster capability in Israel for Israeli use with U.S. taxpayer money. The bill explains the bunker buster technology belongs to the U.S. until the Israelis want to use it. It's quite the grift. Add $150 million annually for RDT&E for unmanned systems countermeasures, $80 million for anti-tunnel tech, and $75 million for drone defense, and you're staring at hundreds of millions more in taxpayer bleed-out. Expanding a tried-and-true grift. This new agreement builds on decades of the same grift, as seen with Israel's Iron Beam. For the past several decades, Congress has funded $500 million per year for cooperative programs between the U.S. and Israel for RDT&E of weapons and weapons systems. The purpose of DoD's cooperative programs is joint RDT&E with friendly foreign countries who have developed advanced technology. This requirement applies to every country except Israel. In the case of Israel, we have given them $500 million per year so they can take our technology and give us little to nothing in return. Such is the case of RDT&E that led to the development of Israel's Iron Beam. In 1996, Bill Clinton and Congress appropriated funding and mandated the U.S. Army to provide Israel with tactical high-energy laser, THEL capabilities. At the time, Israel had little to provide. 10 years later, $300 million of U.S. taxpayer money spent and tech transfer complete, the program was canceled in 2006. In 2007, the next phase began under the same cooperative program, which is funded by taxpayers through today, that led to the development of Iron Beam. In 2024, headlines praised Israeli innovation for developing Iron Beam, but what they did not mention is U.S. taxpayers fund Israeli companies Rafael and Elbit to develop Iron Beam through the $500 million annual R&D appropriations to Israel, nor the fact that the original technology came from the U.S. They also did not mention that Congress and the Biden administration gave Israel $1.2 billion to procure Iron Beam for the State of Israel from Israeli firms Rafael and Elbit. In this win-win relationship between Israel lobby-funded lawmakers and Israel, the primary loser in this arrangement is the U.S. taxpayer, who bears a double burden. Not only are public funds diverted to subsidize a foreign nation's advanced defense industry, but America's own proprietary technology is subsequently transferred to Israeli firms. These companies are then free to leverage this gifted technology to develop and profit from advanced weapons systems, which they often market to strategic competitors of the U.S., such as China. Israel's $1 billion propaganda campaign. This dynamic is perpetuated through a powerful influence apparatus, led by lobbyists such as AIPAC and 27 other Israel lobby groups, which ensures that congressional priorities align with bolstering Tel Aviv's military capabilities. This political influence is complemented by a media strategy, executed through outlets like the Salem Media Group, which disseminate Israel propaganda to a conservative American audience, portraying this one-way transfer of wealth and technology as a vital strategic partnership. More troubling is the fact that outlets like Salem Media Group are listed as unregistered distributors of FARA-registered Israel agents, such as Clock Tower X, whose sole purpose is to disseminate Israel propaganda to unknowing Americans. During the current media blitz to gain support for the U.S.-Israel Defense Partnership Act, Salem Media's The Aaron Mullen Show featured an interview with Benjamin Netanyahu, who spent the entire segment trying to sell the agreement to a conservative audience. To put the size of this propaganda campaign into perspective, Israel recently approved a Hasbara propaganda budget of $726 million for targeting the West in 2026. When you add this sum to the $150 million for 2025 plus the October supplemental of $40 million, the total comes to nearly $1 billion. This sum is exclusive of the hundreds of millions that are funneled into political campaigns through the Israel lobby to essentially purchase votes in Congress that favor Israel. An act of self-destruction. The result is not the closing of an alliance gap, but the systematic erosion of America's technological edge. By allowing strategic assets to be co-opted by a partner that has a history of engaging in espionage and transferring sensitive technology to adversarial nations, the U.S. is not strengthening an ally. It is subsidizing the very challenges to its own global standing. Rather than representing an evolution in partnership, the continued expansion of this relationship signifies an escalation in the exploitation of American taxpayers and a compromise of long-term technological competitive advantage and national security. Gen X Girl Files is a reader-supported publication. To receive new posts and support my work, consider becoming a free or paid subscriber.